Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Cinema.
Hey, man.
Howdy,
I,
howdy.
I thought you were introing the
For
audience.
Patreon members of Cinema Recall, go to patreon.com/Cinema Recall Pod for the full version. And now here is your host, the Vern.
Hey, everyone, Vern here, Cinema Recall Podcast. Thank you for joining us, and let's go ahead and play our wonderful new show intro.
Ooh.
From the art house to the multiplex, physical media, and streaming. Welcome to the Cinema Recall Podcast. Here are your hosts, the Vern and Ashley.
Whoa! Hello out there, everyone. Welcome to Cinema Recall Podcast. I am, of course, the Vern. Ashley, not here for this episode. I promise you, folks, Ashley will be back for more episodes coming out here in October. Right now, while you're listening to this, we are on a little bit of hiatus of the podcast show. And if you are a Patreon subscriber, you are getting this episode right away. So thank you for becoming a member of that. Our guests here are the two hosts of In Film We Trust podcast. We have Liam and Wayne to the show. Welcome, gentlemen. I cannot appreciate you being on the show so much.
Our pleasure, Vern. Our pleasure. Thanks for having us on, man.
It's a pleasure being here. We're in rainy Scotland. You're in Minnesota, which isn't too much better climate-wise. But yeah, we are here over the internet. So I hope everybody's having a good time.
And I first got wind of your show because you two reviewed a very disturbing horror film right now, a Serbian film.
Okay, yeah.
On your
That was
show.
brought to us. That was brought to us by one of our friends called Adam on the Twitterverse. And yeah, I had never seen the film before. Wayne had seen it previously, and I don't think his wife has ever forgiven him for rewatching that film.
Well, what often happens is when we watch a film for the podcast, either Liam and I will choose it. Often Rachel watches it with me, but she just like point blank refused. She's never seen it before, but she knows of kind of the content, the reputation. She's like, I am not watching that with you. You can watch that shit on your own.
That's
Have
fair.
you seen it, Vern?
I have not, but your episode made me more comfortable to watch it. It's like
That certainly was not. That was not our intention, Vern.
It wasn't
you
our
made
intention.
me feel like okay to watch it because you actually did bring up a lot of like good critical things about it. Because every other podcast just talks about the disturbing scenes of it, and that's all they talk about. They don't talk about the overall story, and they don't review other things about it. So your review of that just made me more comfortable to, if I did watch it, I could view it in that context.
Yeah, I think if you're into extreme cinema or even art house cinema, because this film straddles the line between the art house and the exploitation world, it's not necessarily as bad as you think. And here's the duality of it. It's worse than you think, and it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. But the funny thing is, you think, like, if you're coming from the United Kingdom or the United States, you think this film, a Serbian film, is going to be the most depraved film you're ever going to see, which means it's not going to contain, high-level actors. But in the world of Serbia, we have politicians in that film. We have big celebrities in Serbia in that film. It's not like this, Z-list film in Serbia.
Sure. I
Don't
don't
sound
know
too
anything,
convinced there, Vern.
I don't know anything about the politics of that movie there, but that was the first time I noticed that these guys are doing something different and new with their podcast, and so appreciate that very much. Though, but go ahead, tell the listeners out there everything that you want to say about In Film We Trust.
Okay, so In Film We Trust is a podcast between myself, Liam, and my good friend Wayne. So we've known each other since we're roughly 5 years old. We live in this small village, approximately 900 to 1,000 population, and we kind of drifted apart through the years, just through, people going to university, we're moving to different cities, for example. And then when we kind of reconciled, we're like, okay, we're both into cinema, which is something we didn't know to start with. And we used to go for these walks, we used to go cycling, whatever. And we'd be like, okay, this is quite interesting. We never knew we had this, this shared common interest with one another. And I was a big podcast listener at the time. And Wayne wasn't so much. So once he got on board, he started listening to podcasts. He started getting into the community aspect of it. And we're like, okay, let's do what we do on our walks, our hikes, and let's do this on a recorded format. And our tagline is discuss, dissect, and deep dive all things film from the obscure to the mainstream. And I think we've kind of stayed true to that promise. What do you think, Wayne?
Yeah, that's very, very true, because we decided when we started out, we weren't just going to try and... I mean, when we say the mainstream films, we're not just going to talk about, whatever's in the cinema right now, all the classic releases. We wanted to look at films that were kind of obscure, kind of mainstream, films that would appeal to people, but they hadn't necessarily heard talked about a lot. Because Liam and I were alternate. One week we'll do a film he chooses, next week it's a film I choose. And we think, what's an interesting film that people haven't, been talked about to death? What's a film we like, we enjoy, film that we can see lots of interesting themes in? Because, Vern, when you were talking about Serbian film, our intention wasn't just to go and bash it and say, this film's disgusting, look at this scene, look at this scene. We're thinking, is there something more to it? Is there something kind of under the surface that we can talk about? And it was brought to us. I guess we're maybe a little bit hesitant, but I think it turned out a great episode, and it kind of epitomized our philosophy of discuss, dissect, and deep dive.
Which is something we do with it. When guests come onto our podcast, we always say to them, unless it's, somebody who's selling a film they're in or a documentary they're in, we always say to, somebody in the Twitterverse, for example, you say, look, come to us, bring us a film that you want to discuss. We don't put the film to them, they bring it to us.
Yeah. And these folks here have like a lot of great episodes that go into different movies here, from Prince of Darkness to The Black Cat, all the way up to right now, and
The Wild One.
Sorry, Natural Born Killers, and one called Charles Manson Superstar.
Yeah.
Clerks, Raw, very cool. Definitely gotta check that one out again. Freaks, Love and Mercy, The Year the Punk Broke. Is that a movie? Or I know that one's the Sonic Youth and Nirvana tour. That's mostly just like a tour video, right?
That's the one, 1991, The Year Punk Broke, directed by Dave Markey, who also made the Love Dolls films. Now, he came on for a two-parter where on part one, he discussed the Love Dolls Superstars films, which was a two-parter with these underground punk stars of the early... the mid to early 80s, which included members of the band Red Cross and people of that ilk. And when he got into the grunge era, the early 90s, he started making this documentary, hence the title, 1991, The Year Punk Broke. And this was kind of delving into when punk, you could make the argument, became mainstream. You had Nirvana, Sonic Youth, these people who were previously in the underground, who started to make a name for themselves. And he followed them on tour, I think it was specifically in Europe. And he came on to discuss the Love Dolls films and that documentary. And, he was a terrific guy. And like you mentioned previously, we also done the documentary Charles Manson Superstar with the director of that documentary, Nicholas Schreck. And that proved to be another very interesting way to go for the podcast, because what we've always done and what we've always said, our ethos is you don't have to agree with us and we don't have to agree with you. We always want the podcast to be interesting, and that's what we always aim for.
Yeah, and it's great that you bring all these different filmmakers and guests and have different conversations. So I'll post links in our show notes of where you can go and listen to and Film We Trust. Support these guys. They are amazing. Now we come to part of the show, folks, that I am dubbing Rage Corner. Rage Corner, brought to us by the wonderful gents over at the Film Rage podcast. This is part of the show where we rage happily or rage angrily about everything going on in the movie world. And I'm going to start with you, Wayne. What do you have to rage about?
Well, I have to say the topic I maybe want to rage about is maybe a little trite, maybe a little cliche, but this is still something that bothers me as a film fan, as someone who enjoys watching films, as someone who enjoys going to the cinema, as someone who keeps up with film news. It's this oversaturation in the last 10, 20 odd years obsessions with franchises, obsessions with existing properties. I remember going online once, went on Google, and I Googled most anticipated films of the next year. I'm not joking. 80% plus were sequels, prequels, remakes, spin-offs, reboots. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'm like, where is the original material? Where is the good stuff? Where's the kind of stuff that Liam and I talk about when we say the obscure, the little indie films, the fantastic little, thematic polemic movies that we love talking about? But there's just so much crap. Like, oh, we're going to get Fast and Furious 10. Oh, I'm excited about that. That's the best. That's going to be the best one since Fast 9. Things like this. But when you have these franchises, like for example, I was a much bigger fan of like the Marvel franchise than Liam was, for example. Yeah. But even after a while, I started to get to, oh God, we're going to get another one. We're going to have another origin story, another shitty bad guy, another way it's going to have to tie into the whole eventually. And it's that kind of thing. It just goes on and on, like another sequel, another spin-off. We're considering, do you want to see a spin-off, a prequel explaining this character's backstory? No, I don't give a shit. I didn't like the original film. I don't want this spin-off. I want to see more original movies, more interesting films. And I put the blame just as much on the audience, because if people keep going to see these films, studios are going to keep making them. So I think people should go out. They should see new films, interesting films, daring films. Go to the cinema and see a film you've never even heard of. Try that, and you'll be introduced to some fantastic films. I guarantee you.
Yeah, because like our topic, the movie we're talking about, folks, is The Lobster, and I worry that if The Lobster was a huge blockbuster success, there could be a whole franchise of this movie, and I worry about that.
Yeah.
Where'd you go from The Lobster?
Yeah, it'd be an extended universe of like every animal that lives in the ocean or the sea.
Yep.
Dead lobster.
Oh, and I worry too because all of these like legacy sequels and stuff being done years later, and now it's becoming a franchise when it wasn't even considered to be a franchise. Look, I've seen the trailers for Beetlejuice, and I'll admit it looks fun. I like seeing Michael Keaton back. I love seeing Winona Ryder back. It looks like a fun movie. But I worry that it's just going to just tap into all the memorable things I love about the first movie and not giving me anything new. And that's my biggest worry about that.
Yeah, look, I don't want to say I'm against it completely, because not long ago, a week or two ago, I went to see Alien Romulus. And I actually, as a diehard fan of the Alien franchise, I really liked Alien Romulus. But it's one of those films that if it was never made, do I feel like I would truly have missed out on something? Not especially. Still like the film, but would rather see more fresh, original work.
Fair enough.
I've kind of got to the point where, with the legacy sequels, the franchise sequels, it doesn't really bother me anymore because I'm so disconnected from that world in many aspects. It's like, I'm not going to see the latest Marvel film, the latest DC film, and that's not a knock on them. They're doing what they're going to do. But so it's not really my range of cinema. And I think that kind of plays into our podcast itself, and which makes it kind of exciting. Is like me and Wayne have vastly different tastes, so we often introduce one another to a film. Hence why we have this alternating scheme where I'll pick one week, he'll pick the film the next week when it's just us. That's excluding the guest. And yeah, I kind of get that, but my biggest gripe with, I would say it's more the discourse of cinema. We're not allowed to necessarily have a negative opinion anymore. Everybody has to kind of, you either have to be 100% with it or 100% against it. And there's no nuance. I kind of miss the discourse when it comes to cinema now.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I just recently rewatched the movie Mother, and I know that one had a very polarized view of the movie, and I kind of enjoy the whole discourse where you don't have to actually like something or love it or hate it. Yeah, it's just very bizarre and crazy for me. But going to you, Liam, that was a good rage, by the way, Wayne. Love that one.
Thank you. Thank you, Vern.
Do you have anything you want to rage or praise about?
My only rage was the discourse, but I will praise something, and it ties in to this film, Vern.
Okay.
Because one of something that links to our podcast and links to this episode is the actor Michael Smiley, who is in this film. Now, he was in the film he was in Prano Bailey Bond's film Censor. He was in Ben Wheatley's Kill List and A Field in England. Now, never has man blended so seamlessly with dialogue. He's a true underrated actor, and he is the quintessentially face of Britain. He's so terrific in every role he's in, and he seems to go under the radar for whatever reason.
What's his name again?
Michael Smiley.
Michael
he was
Smiley,
the
okay.
He was the co-lead in Kill List. He was the pretty much the lead in A Field in England. If anybody has seen them films, they're very British, and they're kind of, they're not, I wouldn't say underground, but they're not necessarily mainstream appeal. But he is one of the great British treasures that is. He needs to be recognized more. And this was a guy who used to be, he used to live with Simon Pegg. He was at one point touted to be the next big thing.
Yeah, if for British TV fans, he was in a sitcom called Spaced, which was co-written by Simon Pegg. He played Tyres, who's like a bicycle delivery guy who every now and then, like, because he loves rave music, every now and then, like, a rave will play in his head, like the kettle will go off and a dog will bark and like a window will close, and he'll just incorporate that all into one big rave. And he's in The Lobster. He has like 4 or 5 lines of dialogue. I think it's only one scene. You could pretty much have cut it out. But when he popped up, I'm convinced this guy is stalking everything In Film We Trust does. He's probably in every film we've ever talked about. We just hadn't noticed him.
Oh, that's great. I recognize some of the credits here from like Free Fire and Come to Daddy, but I don't think I really recognize who this actor is. Censor I've seen, but I don't think I recognize him so much in that, which is weird.
The character he played was quasi. It wasn't necessarily inspired by Harvey Weinstein, because Harvey Weinstein incident happened post the writing of Censor, but it kind of came out at a serendipitous time because it kind of made sense once you knew the whole Harvey Weinstein story. It was kind of an abusive producer, let's say.
Okay. All right. Well, I will be sure to look up more from that actor, and I thank you, gentlemen, for the recommendation. All right. Okay. My rage has to do with Rotten Tomatoes and people's obsession of wanting to get involved with Rotten Tomatoes. I worry that when people go to see a movie, and every time I see trailers or ad spots for a movie, they always have to mention the Rotten Tomatoes score. And I worry that people spend too much time on that aspect before they go see a movie. And like a lot of friends I talk to won't see a movie if it's got a low tomato score. And I was like, well, not a lot of people are involved in the tomato rating. And look, I'm not going to dismiss people who want to become part of Rotten Tomatoes because that's their dream, that's their goal, and I greatly appreciate that. I never will have Cinema Recall apply to be a Rotten Tomato person just because I'm afraid that we are just going to be another gear in that clock. And we won't have any individuality. So, yeah, we can be part of that system, but we won't stand out. And I could say something is positive, but they'll notice it as like a negative review. Like my review of movies, I always try to list like the positive and negatives of a movie that I can. But if I submit a review and I'm going to say it's mostly positive, but mostly negative, they're just going to take the algorithm and make it into just mostly just positive, and that's not what I said, and they're going to misinterpret my reviews. And I just worry that it's become too much of a thing. I wish people would make up their own minds when they go see a movie. It doesn't have to have, critical praise for you to love it or hate it. I know like Borderlands has gotten, trashed by the critics. I mean, it's bad, but it's not so bad. I mean, I was just on a podcast talking about the film Amityville Backpack, which is about a satanic possessed backpack, all right? And it was all shot on an iPhone camera with hardly any editing. That shit was bad, all right? So people come to me saying that Borderlands is the worst movie I've ever seen. You gotta watch more movies because sorry.
I was about to ask you if the title of Amityville Backpack lived up to its title, and it was actually a haunted backpack. And I'm quite relieved to find out it actually is about a haunted backpack.
They have a whole slew of movies. They have one called Amityville Toilet. I'm going to see one called Amityville Karen.
Well, people get haunted by complaints. Is that what happens?
Is it set in the service industry?
I think it might be,
Maybe.
but that Amityville Karen had James Duvall from the Doom generation in the cast.
Right?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I suppose Greg Araki. I suppose Greg Araki's not getting the same work he used to. But
I know, probably not.
No, but I understand what you're saying, Vern. You were saying about people say, "Oh, this is the worst film ever." The number of times I hear people saying this is the worst film ever, my first thought always goes to, "You've obviously not seen a lot of films." I mean, I've purposefully put myself through. Like, I've gone on bad movie binges. I mean, one of my worst film of 2020, I know that wasn't a great year for film, was a film called Ouija Shark, which was literally a film made on an iPhone with iPhone filters. The shark is a hand puppet on the side of the screen. When people say Borderlands is dreadful, like, I mean, at least that had production value. You've got Eli Roth behind the camera. I'm not going to go and see Borderlands, not because the critic reviews are bad, because I have no interest in seeing Borderlands. And you're right, Vern. People really should make up their mind. They shouldn't just look at a percentage and this is a bit lower, so I'm not going to bother seeing it. I mean, it could be possible you go and see this film and you absolutely love it, because films, like all art, are subjective.
See, this is where me and Wayne disagree. A bad big film is worse than a bad small film, because at least a small film is trying within the sphere of their budget, within the sphere of their talent pool, whereas a big failure is failing usually on many more grounds than a small film.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, because if a smaller movie fails, it's not going to be that much of an issue financially if it fails or not.
Well, it's not just that. You don't know what the compromise is. You've got to think, if you're doing a small film and you've got a budget of, I don't know, a couple $100,000 or so, you've only got a certain amount of scenes you can place that in, a certain many locations. Your actors are budgeted, your props are budgeted. So even though the filmmakers probably know themselves are not making, what they're intending to put on the screen, it's a lot different to somebody who's got, 10, 20, $100 million and failing. So, because usually with the big film, when it fails, you're seeing the vision, in some cases, of the film they're trying to put on the screen. And in the smaller one, it's usually a lot of compromises.
Yeah, good point. Very good point there.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I've always maintained the worst thing a film can be for me is boring.
Yes.
Like, I mean, your film can be stupid. It can be kind of incoherent. Your film can be full of ideas and messages I disagree with. But at least then I can come out and I can say to somebody, let me tell you about this film. If a film is boring and you come out and all you can say is, whatever. Like, if the film just leaves literally no impact on you, if you forget it. I mean, I often used to do like best and worst film of the year lists. I often had to go back and check that I'd seen some films. Like, did I watch that? I have no idea what that even was. Turns out I had watched it, but for me, if a film is boring and forgettable, that's the worst thing it can be, regardless of budget. If you forget it as soon as you walk out the cinema, then it's frankly just a waste of your time.
Exactly. Movie I want to think about is one called The Apple. Because I heard about the movie The Apple when I watched that documentary all about Canon Films, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
And it was the first movie that producer or whatever made, and it is just batshit crazy. It's bad, but it's a fun bad. And it's a movie that I totally recommend everyone should watch because it is just fun. It's crazy. It's set in the year 1995, the future, and it's total futuristic. Oh gosh,
what year was it made?
Like 1981, 82.
Okay, so they had no excuse that 14 years later was going to be flying cars, probably.
But
I have to say, on this topic, I am wearing a very appropriate T-shirt because I have, speaking of bad films people enjoy, I have Tommy Wiseau.
Oh, of course.
Yes. Tommy Wiseau screaming, "You are tearing me apart, Lisa."
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. All right. We are going to get into our conversation about Yorgos Lanthimos' film, The Lobster. But before that, I got to play some ad spots from some wonderful podcasts you should definitely check out.
Go for it.
We got to take a short break, but Cinema Recall will be right back after these ad spots.
Hello again, me popsicles, and welcome to Season 2 of Science Fiction Remnant.
Go ahead and grab your multipass, a drink, and sit back with us and geek out about sci-fi.
Let's pick each other's brain. We want you to be part of our intimate conversation about science fiction topics.
And hang around to the end of the episodes for the real-world science that was inspired by your favorite science fiction.
Let's do this. Let's talk about science fiction topics in books, movies, TV shows, and games.
At Science Fiction Remnant, you are invited to listen in.
Listen now on Apple Podcasts,
Spotify, Anchor,
Audible, Good Pods,
or whatever you listen to podcasts.
You can catch the video pods on our YouTube a month later.
and don't forget your multipass, you me popsicles.
Science Fiction Remnant is brought to you by the hashtag This Is Sci-Fi. No Capone cuties were harmed in the making of this commercial. Ba, 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 ba.
Beautiful.
Get access to episodes early, uncut video footage, and bonus shows by becoming a Patreon member. Go to patreon.com/cinema-recall-pod. And for just $3 a month, you will help support our independent podcast. Thank you so much. And now, back to the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Cinema Recall Podcast. I'm here with Wayne and Liam of the In Film We Trust podcast. We're here to talk about the movie The Lobster for Yahoo for Yorgos series happening. Before we talk about the movie, I need to ask you, gentlemen, what was the first Yorgos Lanthimos movie you ever saw? I'll start with you, Liam.
Well, I can answer this. So in the UK, we have this channel called Film 4, and typically, they usually do a seasoned month or so on the channel, especially around midnight, almost like a midnight movie type of run. And they played Lanthimos' Dogtooth. Not far, probably a few years after it came out. I didn't catch it at the cinema or anything. That was the first time I'd seen that film, and I've never seen it actually since, apart from in bits and pieces. And that struck me because, firstly, I'm terrifically into independent film, weird cinema like our podcast suggests. And that kind of struck me. But the one over the years, for whatever reason with Lanthimos is, the one that stuck with me is Killing of the Sacred Deer. Now, I've got a semi-gripe. Maybe this should have fitted into the earlier part of your podcast, but I have a semi-gripe with cinema or horror cinema. A lot of films are indebted to Kubrick in the horror sphere.
Oh, sure.
When they don't necessarily need to be. So they'll do a lot of, deliberately paced shots that are symmetrical. You have your subject in the middle of the screen, and they'll slowly, dolly into that subject. And it doesn't necessarily make sense with the entire piece of the film. But with this film, Killing of the Sacred Deer, and with Lanthimos, it made complete sense because he made an absolute aesthetic of that film where it made complete sense, and it absolutely worked, and it gravitated towards me. It not hypnotized. That's a bit dramatic, but it drew me to that. It hypnotized with the cinematography of the film. It kind of draws you into the world it's creating, and I understand for many people that's not necessarily Lanthimos' greatest film, but for me, it's the most one that has captivated me, let's say.
That is true. It's a movie that each time I watch it, I get more out of it. I recently recorded an episode with Howard Kastner of Pop Art Podcast on the film, and we both have issues with the film and the structure and its plotting, but it's like you said before, it's very hypnotizing. I mean, he has a way of pulling you in and just keeping you there. And no matter what horrible things are happening to these people, you can't help but just watch it. Yeah.
Well, he draws you in like the dolly zoom he uses. So in
Yes.
that sense, it's that maze, that Kubrickian style, and he's using as an aesthetic that is drawing you in, is lulling you in as the audience, and it captivates you. And maybe that's why, because it's his most Kubrickian film, so maybe that's why it's the most engaging for me. I don't know.
That's very true. I like that very much. Wayne, what about you? What was the first Yorgos Lanthimos movie you saw?
Unoriginally enough, my first Lanthimos film was The Lobster, which I seen not long after New Year 2017. I know for that because I write reviews on all the films that I've watched since about 2015, I think. And I can't remember how I came across it. I think it was recommended to me. I think I may have been channel hopping and came across it. And what really got me about something like The Lobster, right from the opening scene, Liam and I, in one of our earlier episodes, we did Anomalisa. The puppet film,
Charlie Kaufman
puppet sex
film.
movie.
Exactly, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I had a very similar experience watching Lobster as watching the puppet sex film, where about I think 10 minutes in,
That was
I
clearly
realized,
Wayne's choice, just to let you know.
that was my choice. Yeah, about 10 minutes into both of those films, I thought to myself, I can see a lot of people not liking this. I can see a lot of them not liking the style, the approach, etc. But this is very much a film for me. This is a film that's very much talking to me. With something like The Lobster, with Lanthimos, what I like, especially in a film like this, is when ridiculous, absurdist subject matter is tackled in such a deadpan way. And that's one of the things that really appealed to me, the humor in this film. I love shocking, scathing humor. Jokes where you almost go, oh, more than you laugh. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe that punchline. That properly hit me. So after that, I started watching as many films as I could of his. I watched Dogtooth, Killing of a Sacred Deer. I love The Favourite, Poor Things. I've seen Kinds of Kindness, which is his latest one.
I've never seen that one.
Didn't like that one as much. It's like a kind of an ensemble piece. It's kind of episodic. It's like a montage film, three different storylines, kind of loosely connected. Didn't like that as much. But with Lanthimos, when I talk about interesting new filmmakers, I think of people like him, people who aren't afraid to be unconventional, who use odd camera angles, who use those long Kubrickian, uncomfortable long shots where you're sitting there thinking, when's he going to cut? When's he going to cut? And he doesn't. So that's what I love about Lanthimos' films. And The Lobster was the first one I seen. And after that, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to watch more Lanthimos films.
Yeah, I mean, I know for me, it was definitely Dogtooth because I remember seeing trailers for that one online and just thinking, wow, this is batshit crazy. And then I saw the movie and it's like, holy shit, this is even crazier than I thought. And then it was nominated for Best Foreign Film at the Oscars. Yeah. And I was like, really? Wow. All right. And then I think a few years later, he has his first English language debut with The Lobster. And I remember seeing that in theaters thinking, wow, this definitely has the same style and vibe as like Dogtooth and the movie Alps, which he did with his screenwriter. And I wrote the name down because I cannot pronounce the name of this person. Gosh, I'm even gonna try. Euphemus Filippo. I can't pronounce the name, folks. I apologize. If you're Greek, do not be offended. I cannot pronounce his name there. But yeah,
I think it's Filippo.
Felipe, thank you. And then since then, I've been a big fan of even Alps and Killing of a Sacred Deer. You mentioned before, Poor Things and The Favourite. And I do like this style very much. I love the dry dialogue. I love that you watch movies like The Lobster and Dogtooth and The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and even Kinds of Kindness. They all seem to have the same similar dialogue because it was written by his co-writer of Dogtooth in them, and I like that very much. And I know that Kinds of Kindness is going to be a movie that I'll watch again and I'll love it a little bit more, just like I did with The Killing of a Sacred Deer, because I didn't like that movie when I first saw it. Each time I see it, I like it more and more, and I have a feeling that Kinds of Kindness will have the same sort of element where I'm gonna pick up on things more, and things that I didn't find funny, I'll find even more funny, because Kinds of Kindness has some hysterical laugh out loud moments that you feel wrong for laughing at, but still funny.
So you said you saw the trailer for Dogtooth. So where did you eventually end up seeing it? Was it the cinema? Was it on TV? Was it?
No, because I had a buddy of mine get me a pirated copy.
Oh,
of the movie to watch before the Oscars. So I got to see the movie before the Oscars televised in like 2009. So that was really kind of fun. I still have the disc around here somewhere, and it's cool. Except that his copy, they cut out a few we call it here subtitles, like in the middle of it. So I'm hoping that Criterion would get like a sort of like new edition of it, like a 4K version of it or something. Yeah.
Well, do you not think that's the funny thing? Like, we're talking about Dogtooth, which is kind of the Lanthimos film that, most I would say, in the English-speaking world, is what we were familiar with first with Lanthimos. But talking about this film, The Lobster, do you not think in a way that thematics-wise, that this is probably the most akin to Dogtooth?
Yeah, I mean, they both seem to be set in the same world. I guess like I can definitely see because in Dogtooth the parents are keeping these kids like isolated and sort of like controlling them the same way that the hotel management is sort of controlling these people that are there.
Well, do you want to hear my theory on this? Okay, so both films are dealing with utopia and dystopia. Now, both worlds that the films create, they believe they're creating a world for the better. And that's true for The Lobster, that's true for Dogtooth. The parents in Dogtooth believe that they're giving their children the best life they can possibly give. Now, in The Lobster, the antagonists, if you want to call them that, they also believe that the hotel they're running, the society that they're running, is also giving their citizens the best life they can be, which is companionship. And we're playing with that. We're playing with that duality of, okay, when does this totalitarianism kick in? When does the utopia become the dystopia? And Lanthimos once said, he was interested in this totalitarianism, because it springs from attempts to make the world a better place. And it's difficult to see the line between utopia and dystopia. And I was saying this analogy works because in this film, you have the hotel staff, which, is very totalitarian. We want to believe these are the antagonists. But when our character, David, played by Colin Farrell, he moves off to the loners. Now you think the loners are rebellious. They're rebelling against the system, but they also have a strict code of conduct also. And it's very much totalitarian also.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this inescapable process that both sides are going through.
I did think that was kind of a funny tragedy about the film, because he's trapped in this hotel where, like, one of the characters, John C. Reilly's character, it's found out that he's been masturbating when it's against strict rules. So in a kind of classic weird Lanthimos punishment, he has to put his fingers in a toaster.
John C. Reilly.
They just bring the toaster to his desk. I'm like, okay then. And then he escapes and he goes off to be with the loners. But in a sense, he's just traded one kind of prison for another, because they have ridiculous rules as well, but because they see themselves as being more righteous, it's like being on the right side of history. Because the hotel's horrible, but being out with these people where you're actively being hunted, it could actually be worse. It's almost like it's down to your own perspective which life is actually better for you in the long run.
Yeah, both sides have their own set of strict rules that are just very bizarre, and both are there to sort of like control David's person about who he can or who he can't fall in love with. All right, let's get to our thoughts on The Lobster. I'm going to play just a quick trailer, and then we'll be back with our thoughts of this, all right?
If you fail to fall in love with someone during your stay here, you'll turn into an animal. If you encounter any problems, you will be assigned children. That usually helps.
You're like a brother to me. Oh, you're my best friend in the whole world.
I don't think I'm your best friend in the whole world.
Have you thought of what animal you'd like to be if you end up alone?
Yes, a lobster.
A lobster is an excellent choice.
All right, so The Lobster came out in 2015, written by Yorgos Lanthimos and Euphemus Philippe. Oh, I got that right. Starring Colin Farrell, Rachel Weisz, John C. Reilly, Jessica Barden, Olivia Coleman, Lea Seydoux, Ben Whishaw, and Angelica Papula. And it's about a man, Colin Farrell's character, who has to spend 30 days in this hotel to find a mate. And if he doesn't find a mate within that time span, he'll be turned into the animal of his choice. And he goes through a lot of different relationships, and he essentially does try to leave the hotel and goes in the compound with Lea Seydoux's character, and that's where he starts to fall in love with Rachel Weisz. And it's a very bizarre, absurdist, hysterical comedy, and I love the dry sensibility of the movie. We are going to get into some of our favorite moments of the movie there. Now, you both have seen. Well, I know that this is your first Yorgos Lanthimos movie, Wayne, and Liam has seen Dogtooth before. When you went to see this movie for the first time, what were your thoughts about the style of dialogue? Because everything is told in a very like dry dialogue pattern, and it's funny, but it's very odd. What was your like reaction going into this?
Okay, well, you are speaking to two Brits here, Vern. We are as a nation quite dry and off-putting, but yeah,
well, this is more than into dry British humor. All right, this one.
Yeah, I know, but it kind of hones in on that kind of deadpan thing we are more used to, I think, and we're accustomed to over here. And I've always said this film is like the art house. Did anybody ever see that Ricky Gervais film, The Invention of Lying?
I have.
No, which one are you talking about?
Okay,
yeah.
and in that film, the characters just say what they want. Now, I understand that film isn't deadpan, but this is like the art house version where everybody is essentially being upfront in their opinions and saying what they want to say. We have people categorized, we have people, shunned to the side, but it's not that much dissimilar. And I kind of like that approach. I found the narration by Rachel Weisz very funny, and funny in unexpected ways, because they'll do this subversive thing where she'd be narrating something quite intelligently about, the feelings of the characters we're watching. And then it would kind of drift, and then she'd start just narrating what we are seeing on screen. And it's playing with this expectation. It's like, oh, okay, she's just saying what we've already seen. And we accept that, and it becomes funny because we're in on the joke, like the filmmakers are in on the joke.
Well, I've always loved that very dry, very deadpan sense of humor. Like, one thing that annoys me a lot about certain, like, maybe comedians or comedic presenters is when they try to oversell jokes. For example, they think that if you tell a joke, but you do it big, or because you start shouting, you do it loud, that's automatically funnier. That often puts me off. I would much rather hear a character completely deadpan say something utterly absurd or ridiculous. Like, some of my favorite satirical movie reviews are when someone reviews a terrible film, but they review it in a way as if they love it. Like, this is the best film ever. Look at the fantastic cinematography. Like, look how the camera's pointed in the correct direction. Things like that. So what got me into the film, I think it was simply the line, a man has to fall in love or he gets turned into an animal. I'm like, I'm watching that. And then all the stuff in the compound, just the dialogue. I adore the dialogue. Specifically when they're in the compound, not as much later on, but I guess we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But just the ridiculous senses of humor that the characters have, just the dry, completely, almost kind of monotone delivery. I don't know why, I just find that so funny, that shock factor of it, just very deadpan. Like, at one point, Rachel Weisz is, like Liam said, she's narrating, and it's this very kind of romantic, oh, he did this, and he took me to this place, and he wined and dined me. And then she just goes, and then he, like, pulled my pants down and fucked me up the arse. It's just like, where the fuck did that come from? So that's a lot of it. A characters will be having a normal conversation, and, like, the punchlines, because everyone's so deadpan, you don't know where a punchline's coming. And so they're funny, partly because you're so taken aback, you're blindsided by a lot of them, and that's why I found a lot of it just so funny, because it's so dry, so deadpan, even though the subject matter is inherently ridiculous.
It's the punctuations. It's that punctuation of abruptness that kind of penetrates the deadpan language of the film that elevates it, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, even the moments there, because you have Olivia Coleman, and I forgot the other actor's name. They're sort of like the runners of this hotel. They're sort of like the people that run the staff. And I love all the sort of like, there's like, they have this sort of like play situation between their employees with a maid and an older gentleman playing a couple. And they have the sequence where she is in trouble, but since she doesn't have a boyfriend, she's going to be susceptible to having like these dangers happen about her. And it's just very that dry sort of delivery, even to the point too where there's a character played by Ben Wisham who has to literally break his nose in order to impress this other girl played by Jessica Barnum. And their relationship is sort of like based on this facilities. Same thing too with the Olivia Coleman and the other manager, who don't seem like they're a couple, but they have the connection there, and they seem to like want to have people at the hotel be connected just by like one thing. And I feel that happens to a lot of people, for like people that are driving people to be in relationships, is that you have to have like one or two things in common, and that automatically means that you're in love. So, hey, she has a nosebleed. She'll like me if I have a nosebleed too. And I'll just totally fake everything.
Yeah. Well, for me, that was the theme that came through the most, that kind of stigmatization of people who were single and this obsession with you're not happy unless you're in a relationship. And it's funny how the leaders of this facility, they're going on about, the benefits of being in relationships, but it's not like you can be in a relationship for love and companion and support. It's things like, if you're choking on a piece of food and you're single, who is going to save you? So it's like this idea of being in a relationship is entirely functional. Like, what if someone attacks you in the street? You're not going to have anyone to protect you. This bizarre, warped version of watching it. And what was interesting for me is, and this was pure happenstance, the first time I watched this was in 2017 when I was single. I rewatched it for this podcast, and I'm married now. And I did think to myself, am I going to see it in a different way? I'm not entirely sure I did. I think all the themes still came through the same way. Because, like, for example, my wife and I didn't get married in case she choked on a piece of food, for example.
That's what you say.
That would be ridiculous, right?
That's his excuse, and he's sticking to
it. She'd marry you because she's afraid of being, attacked on the street. She should have anyone there to protect her. The whole thing too. Women are automatically victims if they don't have someone there with them the whole time. Like, no one will ever help out a person who's been attacked
exactly
if she's not with someone. So that's
but
very cool.
But you not think this film is very timely in a roundabout way, because it's commenting on the way society characterizes us by our perceived flaws. For example, we have the guy with the limp, we have John C. Reilly who has a lisp. Now, thematically, this is tied into the notion that we look for a partner that is similar to us. Now, if you think of that, just take a look at the way dating apps sync you up with someone with something in common with you. So this isn't verging into this sphere of, sci-fi. This is kind of happening in a roundabout way at the moment.
Yeah, because I'm on like a few dating apps, and I always get matched up with these people. They're like, "Hey, this person loves movies. You love movies, right? But they're also a Trump supporter. But you guys will have a lot in common here, all right?
Okay.
Because you both like movies. Like, well, that's one aspect. That's cool. But the Trump supporter thing is kind of a turnoff.
Okay, well, you see, you're missing out here, Vern, right? You have to be the film fan, and you have to start breaking your nose. You have to get the nosebleeds. Right. You have to specify. You have to specify in this world. Film fans not going to cut it anymore.
And it's good with the whole dating app thing you mentioned as well, because for me, that kind of feeds into the dialogue. Because when you think about it now, you see 10, 15 years ago, if you said, I met my partner online, some folk might have thought that was weird. Now it's almost accepted that, like, I think more than half of people would reckon they'd find their partner online. And when you communicate online, on dating apps, you're doing it through typed out messages, which it's notoriously difficult to communicate tone in those kind of things. So if you think about it, that makes sense for the whole deadpan delivery, because it's like you're not hearing human beings actually speaking, like you're hearing the kind of messages that people will send to prospective dates, to prospective partners. I like you. I think you are very nice. Yeah. I have a nosebleed too. Would you like to be my boyfriend? That kind of thing. So it's that's what comes through in the dialogue.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that. The way this movie, I want to talk really briefly about the way this movie begins, because the movie does not begin with David Colin Farrell's character coming to the hotel. It begins with this long one-shot perspective of this woman driving out to this pasture. And then she gets out of the car and she sees this family of donkeys around and she shoots one of them. And then that's how our movie begins. This very cool thing happening. And I can imagine, so shout out to Lisa Sally Haynes, who does work over on Whatever with Jason Soto. She does not watch trailers of any movie. So I imagine going into this one cold and just seeing that would be very kind of different. And I'm kind of curious, why do you think that Yorgos decides to start the movie this way instead of with our main character?
Well, I think the opening long shot of the woman driving, then for her to pull over, walk towards a donkey and shoot it dead is the perfect opening because it does two things, Vern. It sets up the rhythm of the piece. We know this is going to be deadpan, it's going to be deliberately paced, but it also tells us that the world we're entering is very unusual and to expect the unexpected. So it's totally setting up the piece of the entire film we're going to watch.
To me as well, it also set up this idea of like the kind of animal kingdom, because this film is, I want to say, very animal centric, because the concept of this film is if you don't partner with somebody, then you'll be turned into an animal, and an animal gets killed in the first couple of minutes. So I remember watching that sequence. She shoots the donkey, then it goes into the main story, and I'm thinking, okay, feels like the intro to a different film, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But you have someone coming in and killing an animal. Why did she kill that animal? But when you realize later on the implications of people being turned into animals, that was maybe somebody she didn't like. That was someone she had a fight with. So it introduces that thematic in a bizarre way, because it, like Liam said, the kind of pace and the feel, the long kind of uncomfortable shot in the car, the shooting of the donkey, everything played completely straight, completely dry and deadpan. So it's a very good way of sucking you into the film's bizarre style, because I reckon the style of this would maybe put some people off. Not me, I love the style, but that kind of very... I've heard someone say this film is too dry, that's why they didn't like it. It's not too dry for me. I don't know, you could get too dry humor for me, but it's a great opening sequence because it establishes those things.
So you suggesting like how Colin Farrell's David's brother is killed by one of his potential love interests, that the opening woman is possibly killing her brother or relation or enemy in general? Is that what you're suggesting?
Exactly, like it's someone they know, someone they had a feud with, someone they had a fight with. It could have even have been someone she was maybe going to partner with who didn't make it in time, and she's killing him out of resentment. So we don't know.
Well, there was two donkeys, and she purposely did just kill one of them. So
exactly.
Yeah.
I saw a video, and I think she killed one of the other donkeys because that was one of her lovers that got turned into an animal, and then she got jealous because he found a partner and is making a family, and she just got jealous and shot that.
Who said this?
I watched a YouTube video about this.
Okay.
And the person there said that. That actress is the actress that Colin Farrell meets up with the short hair, and is very cruel, is Angelica Papula, who was one of the sisters in Dogtooth. I believe she's the one that escapes at the end of that. And I love the whole element of how they get together, because before that, there's a woman that wants to give him biscuits and offer him like oral sex, and he turns her down, and she says that she's going to kill herself. She doesn't find a mate. And they have a sequence where he talks to the lady with the short hair going, I hope she dies quickly. Cancel that. I want her to suffer for a very long time. And then they have a sequence where they're in the hot tub, and she starts choking. And he doesn't do anything at all. He just waits. And then at the end of it, she's like, I think you and I should mate. And I thought that was one of the most funniest, weirdest moments in the film. And so those two start a relationship, but she is very cruel. He is not that cruel at all.
Yeah.
And she does kill his brother, who got turned into a dog, and he feels sadness. And when she sees that emotion, she knows right away that he's not going to be a match, because they do not match up each other. And then he ends up escaping and turning her into an animal. And I found that whole aspect. But sometimes we'll do that for relationships. If we want to fall in love, we will force ourselves to be like that other person, even though that's not like us at all. And
making compromises.
I know a lot of friends of mine that have done that. They will be with someone that clearly not right for them, but yet they will do it because they don't want to face being alone. And they say that to me, look, I know he's not right, but I just don't want to be alone. Or she's not right, I just don't want to be alone. And just that aspect of the relationship, because the reason why he's attracted to her is because, she has short hair. And that was it. Just didn't know anything about her personality or anything like that. But I thought her performance in that was great. It's very dry. It's more dry and dark than any other character in this movie. So yeah.
Well, previously you had mentioned, the woman who jumps out the hotel window.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're a Scottish podcast. We both live in Scotland, and the actress is Ashley Jensen. Now, she, as we mentioned earlier in this podcast, the invention of Lion, Ricky Gervais. She was famously in a sitcom of Ricky Gervais's over here in the United Kingdom called Extras. So that's kind of where, a British audience would know her.
I've heard of that show, Extras.
It's an absolutely brilliant show. But to expand on your point, I just thought I'd bring that up. To expand on your point, I think thematically one of the points of this film is because it's kind of a diatribe about individualism, and when we lose that individualism in a conformist society, let's say, and I think it's kind of making the argument that once you couple up, you kind of, or the expectation is, you combine as one whole, so you're losing yourself in this compromise. I think that's one of the themes of this film.
And also, too, even to speak about the Ben Whishaw and the Justice Barnum characters, I mean, their connection is only just on, like, the nosebleeds. And, they have they have a child to sort of, like, make the relationship grow more, but they really have nothing more in common with each other except for just this lie. And he's doing that lie just to avoid becoming an animal. And even like Olivia Coleman says too, that don't think of becoming an animal as being like a bad thing. In many chances, this is your chance to, be something new and maybe find love for the first time ever. Because you can't find love being a human, why not become being an animal? But I think so many other characters in this are just too afraid, and so they will, not so much compromise, but they will change who they are in order to appease something that's not really a part of them at all. And that whole situation gets turned when Colin Farrell does escape with the help, and one of the maids, which I did not write the name down of that character, who the maid is, but she helps him escape, and they go into the forest.
She's in with the loners. She's in with the loners, isn't she?
She's a mole for the loners.
A mole for the loners. And then we meet Lea Seydoux as one of our leaders for this.
Great actress.
Oh, great. From Blue is the Warmest Color. And I believe she was in a Bond film.
She was in a Bond film?
No Time to Die and Spectre.
Yes, okay. Very good stuff there. But when we get to this part in the forest and you think that, hey, this is freedom, we can kind of do whatever they want. I love the moment where they have dance parties with all the characters wearing just headphones and they're just kind of dancing by themselves. And I've been to like parties at conventions where they have that. And it's a weird thing to see.
Silent discos.
A silent disco.
A silent disco. It's so bizarre to see because they're all like dancing to their own music. And
they have that. They have that at Glastonbury Festival over here. Silent discos are a big thing.
They're a big thing there, but for me, music is something that everyone hears together, not just separately in your own headphones. It's a whole.
But that's the point. Thematically, they're the loners, and she states, "Look, we're listening to electronic music because this is something you can dance to solitary." It makes the thematic point that it kind of evades another person.
That's true. No, I get the point of the film. I'm just saying it's weird seeing that element from the film in real life. I don't know. It is
one of the best scenes of the film. Can I just say, when that maid or from the hotel, the mole, as Wayne said, and she's dancing quite erratically, but she's a very good dancer. It's
very much so.
It's one of the best. It's one of the best scenes of the film. I thought funny.
Oh, I imagine too that Emma Stone watched that and incorporated some of that dancing in Cast of Kindness a little bit. Oh,
maybe the Poor Things dance as well. Yeah, it's at this point I would like to highlight. I'd like to highlight Colin Farrell's performance because he's like the lead and he's kind of the anchor for the whole film. Colin Farrell has been great in things, but rewatching this film made me realize something. I think deadpan, pretending to be a cruel asshole Colin Farrell is probably my favorite Colin Farrell, because that scene you were saying where that woman fell out the window and he has lines like "there's blood and biscuits everywhere" because the woman was obsessed with biscuits. And then I think my absolute favorite line in the film, which properly killed me the first time, is you mentioned Ben Whishaw and he's with this woman, they have the nosebleed, and then and they have this little girl to help with their relationship. And Farrell's with the short-haired woman. He's pretending to be horrible, and the little girl comes over, and Farrell kicks her in the shin, and then he says, "Don't cry, little girl. You should thank me. Now you'll have a limp and be more like your father." Do you see when those kind of jokes where like no one would say that in real life? Those jokes properly hit you, like, oh my god, I can't believe, because you can say this in film, but you would not say this in real life. I think that's definitely, for me, that was the funniest line. I think the first time I watched the film, I had to pause and then rewind to make sure I didn't miss anything. I laughed at that line so much first time round.
Well, that was great. Discuss, like Ben Whishaw in this film kind of has some of the greater moments of this film. The moment when he's on stage in the hotel and he's relaying this speech to the audience that his mother was turned into a wolf. And he used to go see her weekly or something, and he took her raw meat, and when he scavenged the raw meat across the zoo and the wolves attacked him, he was like, oh yeah, there was 2 ones that didn't attack me, which gave me my limp, so I'm supposing that one of them 2 must have been my mother.
Those are great too. Let's talk a little bit briefly about Rachel Weisz. Weisz's character in this. I thought she was really good. I do know that originally they were going to have Elizabeth Olsen cast in this. And then she dropped out and Rachel Weisz took this. And look, I don't blame Elizabeth Olsen. She was going to be the Scarlet Witch. She's going to get that Marvel money in there. And I'm thinking, yep, she probably didn't want to be part of this odd art house film or whatever. But I think Rachel Weisz is a great choice. I love the fact that she's the narrator of this. I love how the relationship between Colin Farrell's character and Rachel Weisz's character develops, because it's, natural. He wants to capture rabbits because, he knows that she likes rabbits very much. And it's weird when because what's her name now? Lea Seydoux' character, they have their group go into the city to infiltrate the regular normies in city and town. And
the paired off.
Yeah. And you can tell they are starting to become more closer. But the Loner Society, they don't want people to get together at all. They want people to be separate. They go through some extreme things there. So I know they had in the hotel with John C. Reilly, he's been caught masturbating and had put his hand in a toaster oven. Well, in the Loner Society, if people kiss, they had their lips burned off or something that happened. Their lips cut. And
which goes into that theme of, there's totalitarianism on both ends, which I think is what we were saying earlier. We're trying to evade this society, this hotel, the mainstream society within the realm of this film. But when they escape, there's just a stringing of rules in the loners, is what they're called, this disparate group of people who live in the forest. And as you said, David, Colin Farrell, now you could say he has an almost complete arc in this film, because at the start of this film, when he lives in this city, that he's moved to this hotel, he starts the movie with only survival in mind. He even chooses to be a lobster, not through any kind of, egalitarian ways, but because they live to be over 100 years old. Then, in an ironic twist of fate, it is amongst the loners, those who don't have this respect for longevity, let's say, because they don't believe in companionship. So essentially, in the film, they state they're digging their own graves, they're preparing to die. But it is amongst these where he finds love. Or... Now, here's a twist of fate that I thought, and now I want to see if any of you two interpret the same way. Like Ben Whishaw, the limping man, as he's referenced in this film, who fakes his nosebleed to partner up with the nosebleed woman, Jessica Bardem, is David going to fake blinding himself? Is he going to conform? Is he going to conform, or is this film, is it suggesting to pair up, is to become one whole rather than 2 individual parts? So that plays into the ending of this film. We don't know if the ending scene of this film is Colin Farrell mimicking Ben Whishaw or not. Is he faking blinding himself?
That's a very good point there, because, our Rachel Weisz character is sort of short-sighted. And when the powers that be find out about the relationship, they decide to bring her in and get her completely blinded. So at the end of the movie, she can't see at all. And we're at the moment at the end where they're at the restaurant, and Colin Farrell goes to the bathroom, and he's there with a knife, and it cuts back to her. She's sitting there waiting, and the movie kind of ends that way. I guess it depends on if you have more of an optimistic or pessimistic view about what you think of the end is going to be. I think that in my sort of like pessimistic, optimistic view, I don't think he actually does go through with it. But
I don't think so either.
Yeah, and I really believe, but at the same time too, he's the type of person that would maybe do that sort of thing, because when he's at the hotel and the woman jumps out of the window, he doesn't show any compassion. But at the same time too, we never really got to know her that well either. So he doesn't seem doesn't need to have compassion for that girl who jumped, and he can sort of lie to the other woman. But with Rachel Weisz's character, he has like a general infatuation with her. And we forgot to mention too that all the loners in this are being hunted by the hotel staff, because that's the only way you can stay extra at the hotel is if you capture a loner. Then you can stay at the hotel another couple of days longer, or
45 days initially.
Yeah, depending on how many people you capture.
That kind of plays into the kind of character of the cruel woman, because it seems like she doesn't want to partner up with anyone. She doesn't seem to want to connect with anybody. Basically, if she can just keep bringing in loners, she can just keep extending the stay, probably indefinitely. So it's like she gets this kind of sick, twisted pleasure from I don't want to hook up with anybody. Nobody's like me. I'm just going to go out and kill all these loners. What I got from it, actually, I thought was quite interesting, is that in this hotel they're forcing you to pair up. They're forcing you to be partners, and it doesn't work because there's so many superficial things, like just little superficial details. Or you have this, so I'll partner you up. It's only when Farrell leaves the hotel and goes with the loners, that's the only time there's any kind of genuine love that develops. But the ironic thing is he's not allowed to do it now, because the loners they're like committed singletons. So the only time he's able to develop any kind of compassion, any kind of bond, is when he's in a group that won't let him do it. When it was forced on him, it didn't work. But now, almost because it's forbidden, he can't do it anymore. And something I want to draw attention to, again, something I kind of missed the first time, the whole scene where Weisz and Farrell are doing the hand signals thing, because they have this ridiculously overcomplicated routine where, like, you flick one hand one way, you flick one hand another way, and if you flick it slightly differently, it means two totally different things. And I was thinking that's playing on this idea of couples having trouble properly communicating with each other, and how, that joke about how, you have to be direct with men because us men can't read signals.
Yes.
I was thinking it was kind of like, because she has to do these kind of ridiculous signals. You can't drop hints. You have to be direct. And I kind of felt like that's what it was playing on. You can't just go up to somebody and tell, like, you have to, if you want to say, let's fuck, you have to do like a certain signal with the hand, but don't do it like this, because that means, let's go and kill somebody.
Yeah.
So it's like a failure. It's a failure to communicate in a relationship is what the film is highlighting. Just be direct. Don't come up with this ridiculous scheme for communicating. You can just say what you mean to the person.
Does anyone else feel like we're getting insight into Wayne's marriage?
Oh no!
that's how your wife do this all day long. We have semaphore flags in the house. We just do all this stuff.
That's brilliant. Now, we did talk about Colin Farrell's performance in this. I do agree. Yep. I do like his manner of dialogue very much. Originally, when they were putting this movie together, Jason Clarke was going to be the main protagonist of this. And Jason Clarke, I know, as being the dad in the Pet Sematary remake. And he had the show on HBO about the Los Angeles Lakers winning, which I haven't seen.
He was in Oppenheimer as well.
Oppenheimer, yep. I think they did a really great choice of having Colin Farrell, because I think he just matches that tone very well in this. So. Even from the very beginning of the movie, where he's in the hotel with his brother, the dog, and he's there talking with Olivia Coleman. Where Olivia Coleman would later go on to win the Oscar for The Favorite, and this is the first time I ever saw Olivia Coleman in this. I thought she was great. I love the moment in the hotel where she's singing with the other hotel manager, and they have their sort of like...
it's her husband, right? It's her husband?
Yeah. it is her husband, but then there's a sequence where all the loners go to the hotel room, and they actually, dare him to shoot her. And
well, that has a very strong thematic point. So what you're suggesting and what you're alluding to is when David gets into the group of loners, the loners therefore go into the hotel or they go into the city and they'll threaten these groups of people. Now, we're talking about thematically about conformity, the expectations of society. But what you quickly realize when the loners break into Olivia Coleman in her husband's bedroom, he's not far off. He's very quick to take that gun from the loners and pretend to shoot Olivia Coleman because he believes the gun has a bullet in. And this is thematically interesting because it points to the hypocrisy of the system. And that's what it's suggesting. Those who set the rules don't necessarily follow it themselves.
Yeah. So, are you saying that the loners have their own set of rules and they're trying to impose their set of rules to everybody else? Even though everybody else does not see their set of rules, they still have to force other ones to see the rules
I
that
think
they set?
it's forcing the others, the hotel ones, society in large, to recognize the hypocrisy in their own views. Individual of the loners, there's nothing to do necessarily with the loners. The loners are just essentially the finger on the trigger. But once they've come down to this, this choice, you're quick to find out where their loyalties really lie, and it's with themselves.
And the fact that he pulled the trigger so quickly without thinking, it just shows that he's not really in love with this woman. He doesn't really care. And all I thought watching this scene is, well, somebody's sleeping on the couch tonight.
That is very true.
Well, it puts into perspective, as Olivia Coleman, who's essentially running this hotel with her husband, are they just in a mutually benefit relationship without love?
Yeah.
Is it just for exactly like our Ben Whishaw character and Nosebleed Girl, Jessica Bardem?
Well,
is it essentially the same situation?
I think
that's what it's alluding to.
What I was thinking is so much of what we see with Olivia Coleman and the husband is they're both on stage. So you think how performative the relationship is. It's like those couples that are always posting about each other online. Oh, I love this person, etc. It's that very kind of performative relationship where you don't necessarily believe in it yourself, but you have to reinforce the idea. You have to put out this idea that you're a perfect couple, that everything is hunky-dory, you're very happy, but it's all an act. And the fact that they're on stage is a great visual way to represent that.
Well, they're performers, essentially.
Exactly.
I was thinking about another movie when watching this one, and I was thinking about the movie Ingrid Goes West with Aubrey Plaza.
I've never seen that one.
And Elizabeth Olsen. And it's the old element with Elizabeth Olsen and her husband as being sort of like the picturesque, perfect couple that people see on Instagram and think that, hey, things are great, but things were not actually great in that relationship. And Aubrey Plaza's character becomes so obsessed with Elizabeth Olsen's character because she feels that, hey, she's got this great life and is doing all these things, but that's not the actual reality of this. And I know in this movie, all the single people, when they're in this hotel, there's a great sequence where all their tables are facing the couples. They're not facing each other. They all have to face single file, and they have to look at other couples to be inspired to see them and be hey, these people are happy. But when you see other people start to get into relationships with other people, those people that are in relationships are not necessarily happy with each other. They're just afraid of the consequences of being single. And people, I've been single for a while there too, and I'm totally fine with that. I've dated here and there, but people have this notion that, hey, if you're single, that you're just this lonely person, no one's to be around you anymore, you might as well become an animal. And that's not necessarily the case. You can have a great group of friends and everything too. And yeah, I love it because this movie is sort of reflections on how we're supposed to see companionship, and companionship may not be the best for everyone. I've seen people who are in companionship who just are not happy at all. All right. So, and I know people that are married are doing well.
Yeah, that's why that Ingrid Goes West comparison is so appropriate, because it's easy to put up that veneer of perfection. It's easy to look on Instagram or Twitter or some social media and see people posting about how fantastic their life is. And yeah, you can be in a couple and you can talk about how fantastic your life is, but that doesn't mean you are necessarily happy. It's like you're fooling yourself. You're trying to convince yourself that all is good when it's actually not. And that's the most damaging thing, the fact you're lying to yourself about your situation, but you're doing it, you're putting on this performance because you want everybody to think that everything is good.
Yeah. Before we close here, folks, I do have some comments I want to read from our listeners about The Lobster here. But I do want to talk really briefly now, because I do know that The Lobster and also Dogtooth was written by Yorgos Lanthimos and Ethel Philippe. And I know that movies like, Poor Things and The Favorite, they were co-written, and I'm trying to find his name right now, and I'm blanking on the screenwriter's name of that. And I had it here, and now this is where it's really bad here, folks. It's like, usually this comes up right away. He's the guy who also did the show The Great, and I can't remember his freaking name now. Tony McNamara.
Okay.
I liked how
the
different
beauty
styles.
of editing.
What's that?
The beauty of editing.
That's well. Sometimes we'll just go live with this shit, folks. That's all right. Tony McNamara. And I love how different screenwriting that each person has, and I can imagine people who so people who watched Poor Things and then watched The Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Okay.
Are gonna have like two different reactions to it. Even The Favorite too, because people that don't know Yorgos movies very well, I can show them The Favorite, and they're like, "Oh, I like that," but then I'll show them like Dogtooth or even The Lobster, and they're thinking, "Well, this is very different style of screenwriting," and I love that. And I'm hoping that he works with other screenwriters. Like, I know that Tarantino is gonna stop directing, but I do hope he still writes. And I would love to see Yorgos Lanthimos direct a Tarantino script.
Oh, why is that? I'm curious.
So I'm thinking about the movie True Romance and how Tony Scott turned his dialogue and turned to the like bravado, like action blockbuster film, and seeing like Yorgos take his fast style, because Tarantino has a very fast-paced dialogue. I mean, it's very like almost like His Girl Friday style of like dialogue, very quick,
which is quite purposeful. He's a big His Girl Friday fan.
Yeah, but Yorgos, his screenplays are very like kind of droll and dry, and it'd be kind of weird and interesting and unique to hear Tarantino's words from Yorgos' character's mouth.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure people out there I'm sure you two are not agreeing with this at all. Like you're wrapping this in your head right now, thinking this is just too bizarre.
I've never drew these two conclusions, Vern. So you have to give people space, You have to give them a bit. You have to give them time to think about this thing. I mean, does it work? I'm not sure. I'll agree with you. It's your podcast. I'll agree. I'll be like, yeah, Vern, 100%.
It's bizarre. It's really bizarre to hear that shit.
Yeah, I think he would very much have to be with someone who be on the same page, because it would be weird taking, say, a more conventional screenwriter and a more conventional screenplay and giving it the Lanthimos treatment.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's like he felt he had something kind of mundane and he was trying to jazz it up in that Lanthimos way. So I think that's why he often has a lot of input on the screenplays, because he obviously has this very clear vision about how the film is going to be, how it's going to be shot and composed and presented, and he wants a screenplay that's going to reflect those sensibilities.
It's weird that one of the correlations I drew when I was rewatching this film for this podcast was Lanthimos and Wes Anderson. Now, these are two directors who have an idiosyncratic way of shooting. They've got very identifiable styles. Now, I was wondering, because when I was watching The Lobster, and I don't think I'm on my own on this opinion, is there is a point where it gets to the halfway point of The Lobster and it drifts, and you're like, okay, something is changing and it's not quite as engaging once you get to kind of the hour mark, because it's about an hour 50, hour 55-minute film. And I thought, okay, what am I missing in the second half of The Lobster that I'm not getting in the first half? It's the jokes. And this was purposeful. Lanthimos had this, as we said, this injection of humor, this abruptness of humor in the first half when they were in the hotel. But when it becomes the second half of the film, it becomes much more entrenched as a love story. And the humor kind of subsides. The abruptness and the overt humor kind of subsides. I know there's the subtle humor. And I miss that injection, and I think it needed that. And I think that's why Wes Anderson works for me. It doesn't necessarily work for Wayne, I understand this, but Wes Anderson works for me because the conceit remains the same. Like in The Lobster, it's so idiosyncratic. But the thing is, once you get over the grandeur, once you get over the shock, let's say, of The Lobster, you become used to its conceit. And then you're like, okay, I'm an hour in, I've kind of got its sensibility now. And when it misses that humor, you're like, oh, something is missing. And Wes Anderson knows to keep the humor going the whole film. Personal opinion. I understand some people have problems with Wes Anderson as well. And I think it was one of the reviewers for The Guardian, I think it was Peter Bradshaw, and I think he made a similar observation. He said, The Lobster is a film of two halves. I think he gave it 3 out of 5. I may be wrong. I'm sure it was 3 out of 5. And he said, it's a film of two halves. The first half in the hotel is brilliant. The second half's not bad. It's a good film, but there's something lacking. And I believe that also. The injection of humor is missing.
Sort of like
that's the
Full
easy
Metal,
way to
it's
sum
like
it up.
Full Metal Jacket. You know, the first half.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. Yeah.
First half is really funny, and then second half not so much right there.
Well, because someone said that about, I think one of Kubrick's favourite reviews for Full Metal Jacket, someone said around the halfway point when it goes from the training camp to Vietnam, he says, this is where the film devolves into a masterpiece, which is something Kubrick very much like. But I'm like that with Full Metal Jacket. Like, I love the whole scene with the Marines and with Sergeant Hartman. I don't dislike the second half, but for me, after such an incredible, like, punchy opening, the rest of it just feels like kind of more like a standard war film. With The Lobster, it's what Liam was saying is I feel like after a while, especially when we've been out of the hotel for quite a bit, the film kind of starts to lose steam. I don't feel like it starts to say anything else. There's some scenes where I felt my attention drifting, and it could just be the film is a victim of how good the first half is, because I love the first half. If the second half had been as good as the first, this could be one of my favorite films of all time. Not even joking, but because it started off so well and there was so much punch and there was so many jokes that kept you invested. And this is actually a line from my original review in 2017. I said, ironically, it works best as a love story when it isn't trying to be a love story. Now, that might be like a deliberate choice because when...
That's a good line, Wayne.
Because,
yeah, that's very good.
Thank you. Yeah, I read my own review. No ego there whatsoever. But
no, I have the ego, buddy. I love it.
But yeah, but when Weisz and Farrell are kind of together and it feels much more naturalistic, you do feel like there's more of a bond developing between them. It feels less like the kind of first half dynamic where they're being forced together. And as they're being forced together more, I don't enjoy it as much. And by the time the film ended, I didn't dislike the ending, but I felt it's like, right, this is about the right time to end it. So it's great, especially the beginning. I'm not saying the ending is bad. It does for me kind of meander a little bit and it loses a bit of steam and it doesn't end as good as it started, I'll say.
Okay, let's take a poll of the three of us. Who believes Colin Farrell actually blinds himself in this film?
I'm not sure he actually does blind.
No, don't affect anybody else's point of view. Vern, it's your podcast. We'll let you go first.
Okay, I think that he actually does, but they still leave because she doesn't like that he blinded himself.
So he does blind himself.
He does to impress her, but she's upset because like I need someone to see for me, you asshole. You have no eyes. How are we gonna help you?
Okay.
So she leaves, decides to become single because she's like, you actually did that. You're an idiot. I can't be with the guy who's an idiot. I'm done.
Okay.
Damn it. Yeah.
Because that would be a dumb thing to do. All right. And she
exactly.
should leave because if you blind yourself with another person or hurt yourself to be with a person, that's just dumb. You're just doing things to please someone else and you're not really like helping yourself out. So no, she does leave. He does blind himself, but she leaves because he's a fucking idiot.
Do you know what I'm thinking, actually? I'm thinking of this in a kind of the way that that Lanthimos and his screenwriter, how they would write this. I imagine maybe he does one of his eyes and he can't bring himself to do the other, and he comes in and explains the situation. She's like, but you're not blind like me. And he says, well, I can close my good eye and pretend I'm blind.
Yeah.
I can see that being like the kind of line that they maybe could have used. I don't know if that would have been the kind of ending stinger, but I feel like in that kind of dry, very deadpan sense of humor, that would have fit the style of the film.
So that's your choice. You're going. So Vern's going for he blinds himself. Rachel Weisz isn't impressed. Wayne, you're going with one eye. Then one eye's it. Is that both?
Yes.
Is that both your opinions?
Yes, that's mine.
I'm going the opposite way. He doesn't blind himself. Because
Wow.
what do we know of Colin Farrell's character? He's a survivalist. He wants to be, and it opens with this, essentially opens with this. He wants to be a lobster. He wants longevity. He wants the 100 years. Thematically, he doesn't want to blind himself. Who's his friends with? Ben Whishaw. What does Ben Whishaw does? He fakes a nosebleed to get into a relationship. I think this is tying in thematically again. What happens at the end of this film when he's with Rachel Weisz and he goes into the bathroom? We see him go into the mirror, but we don't see him commit the act. And I think this is playing with film language. What he does is he looks in the mirror and it cuts to black. So it's already playing with our expectations with film language. We don't hear a scream. That lack of scream means, in my opinion, he's faked it. He's going to fake to Rachel Weisz. They're going to be together. She's going to think he's blind, but he's just thinking longevity. He doesn't blind himself.
The problem now is we actually have a three-way tie, so we're going to have to put it to the audience vote.
That's a good point,
Vern,
you might see that.
You need to put a poll up.
You have to put a poll up now, Vern, yeah.
Oh, all right. I will put a poll up here. All right.
There you
go. With the three choices. Go ahead and message me your choices again so I can remember what that is, how the character does blind himself or not. Really quickly, folks, give me your quick end thoughts of The Lobster and a rating of 1 to 5. I'll start with you, Wayne.
Okay, so The Lobster for me, it's kind of epitomizes everything I love about Lanthimos. I love how it's kind of bizarre. It's very off-kilter, that very deadpan dialogue that you laugh at because it's not overplayed, it's not overdone. It does feel very naturalistic, even though this is maybe not what you'd say in real life. It does suffer in the second half of repetition and meandering. Leaving it on an ambiguous note, I'm happy with that. I actually love films that are happy to leave it on an ambiguous note. I don't like especially forced happy endings. That always annoys me. But I absolutely love this film. I love that it got me into Lanthimos. I love that I laughed so much at it. I guess watching it a second time, the shock of the jokes aren't there anymore because you've heard them before. So maybe the jokes don't hit as well for that reason. But I would honestly say, out of 5, I'd probably say 3.5 to 4 stars because I genuinely really do like this film.
Nice. Liam.
I'd agree with Wayne there. 3.5. It's a really, really solid, it's a really good film. I think it's the film Lanthimos intended to put onto screen. It's a film of two halves. There's no denying that. And I'm not saying Lanthimos in any way failed to bring the second half up to par with the first. I think the second half is absolutely what he intended. I just don't think it's as engaging. It's not as entertaining. But it's a strong film. I think Colin Farrell's a terrific actor. I know he was kind of maligned for a period of his earlier career. I think he's a strong actor. I think everybody gives a great performance. Yeah, I'm going to go 3.5. Great film. I don't think for me personally it has a rewatchability factor of Killing of the Sacred Deer, but it's 3s and 6s. It's like, what are you going to do? I mean, some people are going to like it, some people aren't. Some people are going to have different opinions. For me, it's below Killing of the Sacred Deer.
That's fair. For me, it's definitely one of the lower Yorgos Lanthimos films, but I still love it very much. I'm between a 3 and a 4 as well. I find it to be very funny, very absurd, and shocking. I like the elements at the hotel more than I do the elements in the forest. Right. But there's some very funny moments in the forest as well as the hotel. I kind of wish the hotel was a little bit longer. I want to see the actual changing of the animals and whatnot. I want to see more animals in this tale. I think this is a perfect sort of like debut for American audiences to see Yorgos' work, because this is the first English language adaptation, and it was nominated for Best Screenplay at the Oscars, won the Jury Prize at Cannes, and from going from a movie like Dogtooth to this, it just made sense. Like, I cannot imagine American audiences having an English language version of Dogtooth first, because that's going to really put off a lot of people, the subject matter of that. By the way, check out our episode on Dogtooth with Kaylee from Once Over with Kaylee and Bo of Collateral Cinema. We do talk about that film in great detail, so check that out as well. But yeah, The Lobster, I remember seeing this in theaters because such a big fan of Dogtooth. And I can see people's reactions watching this in theaters and not getting the humor, or people like you were doing, Wayne, like laughing at things that maybe you shouldn't laugh at, but you feel kind of ashamed about laughing at it. And I love that element of this movie very much. And Yorgos seems to do that with each movie that he makes. He makes these movies with these very kind of like dark humor that is engaging. I will say that Poor Things is probably the only movie that he's made that has been like uplifting in terms of its ending. It's got a very optimistic ending versus these other movies that are very ambiguous. And Poor Things has ambiguous ending, but it's more uplifting and happy. The Lobster and Killing of a Sacred Deer, Dogtooth, they all end on these like ambiguous notes, and I love that very much. I love the fact that we have this conversation about whether or not he blinded himself. I think that's great. So we do have some comments here from our listeners who had very different views about Dogtooth that I'm going to read to you right now, if that's all right. So over on the Twitter sphere, because I'm calling it Twitter, it's not the other. Yeah. Unless it's if I'm gonna say if it's Mia Goth's Ets. So
Good call, Vern.
All right. So at Z Mullis says on the Twitter sphere, I could live my life over again. I would do everything exactly the same, except I would not see The Lobster. And then they wrote, borrowing Peter Sellers' reaction to seeing The Magus, which I don't know what that is.
What is that?
I don't know. It was a movie that Peter Sellers saw and did not like. The Magus. Magus. Cam Sully of Jacked Up Review Podcast said, yeah, I'll do anything except that film. Best of luck on it, though. So he will do anything for love and film, but he will not do that.
He's definitely Lobster.
Our friend Kaylee from What's Over with Kaylee wrote, The Lobster is the only thing that ever makes me want to drink a Campari and soda. And then
it's a good thing, I suppose.
That's a unique compliment. Is that a compliment?
I think that's a good thing. I imagine if you like Campari and soda, it is. So
I've never even had Campari and soda, so I don't even know what that comparison even means.
I don't know either. Frank Hanover at Will and Bourbon wrote that the movie made me uncomfortable, and I had to come back to finish it.
That's quite a good review, I suppose.
Yeah. Jaylen
You want to shake the audience up every so often.
Yeah. Exactly.
Jaylen Sella from Women in Session wrote, a scary film about loneliness, monogamy, and modernity. One of my favorites by Lanthimos. Ebony at eBunny061 wrote, rated at 2.5 out of 5. Felt it could have had a little more, but was an interesting take on loneliness. Film Rage Podcast wrote, it's a Mondo like everything he does. And then last one here from Rachel's Review at Rachel_Reviews wrote, would have worked better as a short, but I found the longer it dragged on, the more annoyed I was with it. So there you go.
See, I think that's the comment that came closest to our own sentiments, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Who was the person? Did somebody say it was a Mondo film?
Yeah, that was the What's Over the Film Rage Podcast. It's a Mondo.
I'm not sure. I don't know what that means. I mean, you got Mondo Kane.
So the Film Rage Podcast, they have like 3 tiers. They have it's a rage, it's a meh, or it's Mondo. Mondo means it's the best. It's
I thought you meant the Italian genre films from like the 60s and 70s.
Mondo Conne films, something like
Yeah, I was trying to think, how the hell does that work?
I was more confused by that than the Campari and soda comment.
Yeah, because Mondo translates in English to world, so I'm not sure.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, so different language interpretations there, gentlemen. We are at the end of the episode here. Thank you so very much for coming on here to talk about the Lobster in very great details. I love you folks very, very much. Go check out
You're welcome.
the In Film We Trust podcast, because these gentlemen are way more better articulate in their film discussion than I am. And so if you want to actually have like good conversations about films, check them out, because they are excellent and wonderful. And my show feels a little bit more smarter now that you were on here to discuss films, and I greatly appreciate that very much. Can you tell the listeners what is going to be going on in your episodes? Now, keep in mind that if you're a Patreon member, you're hearing this episode way early in advance. And if you're a regular listener, you're hearing this episode in the middle of September here. So just what do you have going on?
Well, firstly, thank you for those kind words. Secondly, I think it's an accent thing. You know, we can fake being smart just purely by the British accent. So, but I opened this episode, so I'll give Wayne the grace of ending this episode for you.
Yeah, well, so what's coming up? Well, we're working towards October. So one of our most memorable Octobers is we did Video Nasty Month. So there could be maybe a theme going on in October. We're hoping to have more guests on, because our guest episodes have been some of our best. We mentioned the Nicholas Schreck one earlier with Charles Manson Superstar and such. That's our most listened to episode so far, which knocked Threads off the top spot. Had been there for ages. So yeah, so we're going to carry on doing what we're doing, obscure films, mainstream films, getting some guests on, just doing whatever we can. Like, we're looking to guest on other people's podcasts as well. We're asking people to come on ours too. We've got to a point people are actually messaging us and saying, would you like guests on the podcast, which is someone I never thought would happen, because it was always us messaging other people. There's guests we've had on before we'd like to have back on as well. We're in discussions on that. So whatever time you listen to this, we've either had some guests on or we've got some plan for the future. But we're very much looking forward to having new people on or returning people who are looking to come back.
And also, everybody's own Vern from Cinema Recall. He's going to be appearing on our podcast soon for an episode that we all love. We all love the film we're going to be discussing. So if you know Vern well, you might know what we're on about. It's a 1960s film. Don't give it away yet, Vern.
I won't give it away, but it is an awesome movie. Okay, it's definitely my happening, and it freaks me out. So very happy to.
You tease.
Oh yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for listening. Before I go, I gotta give a quick shout out to all of our wonderful Patreon members. Thank you very much for your support on the show. I love you dearly. I cannot thank you enough for your support. I want to thank right now Jeanette Miller at AKA Jeanette on Twitter. She's one of our voice actors for our upcoming Reservoir Dogs audio drama.
Ooh,
I just have a few more elements to record with that, and then I can finish up the editing and get that released. That should be released soon. Also gotta thank Linda Castro from Bed Knobs and Broomflits. She's also one of the voice actors of our Reservoir Dogs audio drama. Big thank you to you, Linda Castro. And I want to thank Jen McQuaid from Shots and Applaud. I miss Shots and Applaud. I hope you come back and do more episodes, because you're really cool. Thank you for supporting our show. I want to thank Jason Soto from Rabbit Hole Podcast. Thank you very much, Jason, for all your support and helping us out with things there. I got to thank Steve W. Steve, you don't have a website. You don't even have any social media, but you give me money, and I love you very much, Steve. I don't know who you are, but thank you, Steve. I want to thank Matt and Ashley from Mashley at the Movies. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Love your reviews. I can't wait to hear what you think about the new Crow movie, and I'll look forward to review on that. I want to thank Donnie Roberts on Twitter at Unreal Goals. Donnie wrote the Deep Sea Anthologies, and Donnie, you're one of our $10 Patreon members, which means you can come on anytime to talk about anything you want, but yet you have not emailed me about any shows you want to do. So Donnie, you're way overdue about doing some Donnie shows. We'd have a whole week of nothing but Donnie shows. You just gotta contact me and be like, I want to do a show on this, and I'm like, sure, let's do a show on this. You want to do a show about toilets in movies? We'll do a show all about the famous toilets in movies, all right? That's fine, okay? We're covering all the Amityville horror movies. You want to come on here and talk about Amityville toilets or Backpack? Check out my upcoming guest spot on Dork Points. Talk about the Amityville Backpack.
Okay.
We do a whole live commentary on Amityville Backpack. I'll post links to that as well.
The Amityville we didn't know we needed.
See, exactly. Yeah, and I know I'm going to have some other upcoming guest spots coming up on podcasts here and there. We'll let you all know that the episodes that I record with Ashley are going to be just every month or every couple of weeks or so. But yeah, check us out there on all your podcast platforms, apps. Greatly appreciate the support. And with folks, I'm leaving you all here. And thank you again to Wayne and Liam of In Film We Trust podcast. And we'll see you all later.
Thank you so much, Vern.
Bye.